Hello, and welcome back to a special E-Hermes Electric Adventure Travel Series. We are taking the Rivian R1S to the Casita Travel Trailer Factory in Rice, Texas, to pick up a new Casita Independence Deluxe, then down to Bryan, Texas to Casita Works, a fabricating shop that specializes in modifications to Casita trailers. After that, we're going to wander throughout Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and we might even make a quick dash into Old Mexico. Then we'll be dropping Mrs. E-Hermes off at the Albuquerque airport, where she will be flying back to Northeast Ohio for a family commitment. I will then finish driving the Rivian and Casita back to Northeast Ohio. We will show you what it's like to travel, hike, camp, e-bike, and sightsee in a Casita, towed by a Rivian, and any special charging challenges we might encounter. So come along with us. Welcome back to E-Hermes, your electric adventure travel channel. Please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and hit that bell button to be notified each time an episode of this series is uploaded. Hello, and welcome to episode 7. Today we leave Palo Duro Canyon State Park, and we are beginning our trek down to Big Bend National Park. This is a difficult route with electric vehicle. We're going to have to stop tonight and charge at the campground we're at in Lubbock. We also have another stop at a RV park just north of Big Bend National Park in Marathon. And then we will drive into Big Bend National Park and charge at the campground there. And if we can't charge there for whatever reason, we're sunk. There's no way out. So this one's kind of critical. Mrs. E-Hermes is a little bit nervous, but it'll be all right. It always is. Here we go. But before we get on the road, we have to wait in line to dump our poop. It took us 5% of the battery to drive up out of the canyon. 8 miles, 5% of the battery. We hope we get better efficiency the rest of the day. All right, we arrived at Buffalo Spring Lake Campground, just outside Lubbock, Texas, with 22% battery. After leaving the campground last night, we didn't charge at all. We went 133 miles today, pulling the camper into a pretty stiff headwind. We're going to charge to 100% again tonight here at the campground and then head out again tomorrow morning. Despite the fact that we took a little foray to a couple wineries yesterday, which both took range away, about 7 or 8%, and took time away from the charger, we were still able to get up to 90% overnight while we slept. So we'll be leaving here with 90%, heading to Midland, Texas, to the Electrify America charger there. Then we may or may not stop in Fort Stockton. We'll probably have enough to get to the campground, but I may put a little energy in it just to make sure we have enough overnight. Even though we're going to be charging overnight, I don't know how good the electrical service is at that campground. We'll see. We made it to the Walmart in Midland, Texas with about 5%, 6% battery capacity. Charged there to 92%. Now we're headed to the Walmart in Fort Stockton. We'll charge up there to 80% and then go to the campground. We did have to unhook the trailer for the first time because the charging station was pretty crowded and very tightly laid out, so there was no room for the trailer. I started with the trailer connected, somebody came and I was blocking the stall, so I had to go unhook and go back and finish charging. Well, there was not much to show you between Midland, Texas and Fort Stockton, Texas, but we made it here with 21% battery, so we had plenty. We were able to drive at decent speeds. We're going to charge here for probably about a half an hour, get up to 80%. Then we'll top off at our campsite, which is about 60 miles from here. And then tomorrow we will make our final push into Big Bend National Park. We arrived at the Marathon Motel and RV Park with 38%. We have put it on the charger. It says by morning we will be close to 100%. If not at 100% by 5 a.m., which is plenty. I don't think we're leaving that early, so by the time we leave, we'll certainly be full, and we will head on down to Big Bend National Park, Rio Grande Campground, I think it's called. But in Big Bend National Park. And just by the way, the Marathon Motel and RV Park is very nice. We had a very pleasant night's stay at the Marathon Motel and RV Park's RV Park. We had full hookups. We got the vehicle charged to 100%, so we have a completely full charge heading into the abyss where there are no chargers, only hopefully a NEMA 1450 outlet about 115 miles away. If it doesn't work for some reason, I don't know how we get back out of the park. We have arrived at the Rio Grande Campground, RV Park, full hookup, whatever it is, with 65% battery. We only used 35% of our battery, but we decreased about 2,500 feet coming down, so going back up we'll use much, much more. In fact, there was a time I went about 15 miles and actually gained 1% rather than losing because it was such a steep and constant downhill. So I don't think we'll have any problem getting out of here if we can get a full charge, but it'll be a lot closer than it was coming here. Now let's go have some fun in the park. The first thing we did was go check out the mighty Rio Grande that was very nearby to our campsite. They have signs posted warning you about bears and javelins, but nothing about this fella. Yes, this bobcat wandered right into our campsite. It was pretty thrilling to see him, but it was a little bit disconcerting to see him in broad daylight as they are normally nocturnal. He did not seem at all bothered by us. We left him alone, and he left us alone, and after a few moments he wandered away. Next, we rode our Aventon e-bikes to Boquillas Canyon for a hike. We saw horses and burros on our hike into the canyon. Here the river enters the canyon from a relatively flat floodplain out where the campground is and the rest of the park on both sides of the border. And then it gets really tight into the canyon. Not sure if you can pick it up over the sounds of all the insects, but there's rapids around that corner somewhere you can hear. That was pretty much the end of the trail here, unless you want to be like the Narrows in Zion, except I think this river is much deeper right here. And it was getting hot. It was going to get up to 97 today. Of course, tomorrow I think it's supposed to be 110 and maybe 113 or 15 the day after that. But our big target today was to get across the river into Mexico, so we're going to head back to the border crossing, the Boquillas border crossing, to go to Boquillas del Carmen, Mexico. To animals, the border is a unknown item. They freely go back and forth across the river. First stop, the cutest entry point I've ever seen. After visiting with the customs people, you do have to show your passport. You must have a passport to go and come back. I think you really need to come back, and they're not gonna let you go if you can't come back. So then you walk down about, I don't know, quarter of a mile to the river, and this gentleman here has the international ferry. He's going to ferry us across. On the way back, I think I may walk just to say I walked across the Rio Grande. Then we will get on a horse and ride into town. So to get into town, you can ride in a vehicle, you can walk, you can ride a horse. We decided to ride burros. Your wrangler walks along with you, leading the horses and burros into town. He then becomes your tour guide, points out all the best destinations,
including inviting you to his home to see his family's arts and crafts.
We had to check in with the Mexican government and pay a $4 per person fee of some sort. No problem. Then we went over to the Falcon restaurant, Jose Falcon. Cervezas, of course. After lunch, we wandered through the town. To me, this is the real Mexico. It's a hard scrabble life, but the people living there seem to be pretty happy. Then we stumbled upon the cantina. I hadn't come all the way to Mexico to pass up a chance for authentic Mexican tequila, so I went in and ordered a shot. The barkeeper was very generous and actually poured me a double shot. After dos cervezas and a double shot of tequila, I stumbled across the Rio Grande back into the U.S. We cleared customs and headed back to the campsite. Then we spent the last of the day watching a beautiful sunset over the Rio Grande.
So we've proven that the Rivian can pull the camper just fine. We can use it and charge and all that. Now we're going to take it off-road and see what it does off-road and four-wheel drive. This is a road that connects to another scenic paved road, and we're going to go down it, and I think we're going to do a hike off of this one, and then a hike at the bottom of this one, and then we'll head back to the camper. So the first thing we're going to do is change the ride height from low to high. For now, I'm going to leave the drive mode in all-purpose. It's a dirt road. If I really think we're getting into a rougher area, I'll go to off-road.
Honestly, you could take most sedans down this old Maverick dirt road. I decided to try an off-road trail that was to lead back to some backcountry campsites. To say that Mrs. E-Hermes was less than enthusiastic about this decision is an understatement. For this escapade, I did indeed put it in off-road mode. The Rivian handled the terrain exceptionally. There was no wheel slip, no ground clearance issues, nothing. The only thing that gave me pause was the stock all-season Pirelli tires on the sharp rocks. Because I didn't want to get a flat back there and have to change it, even though I did have the spare, we decided to cut that part of our trip a little bit short. Hopefully we fare better than they did. This is the beginning of the hike into Santa Elena Canyon. You have to walk through another feeder creek first. Fortunately, this time of year it's dry and we shouldn't have any problems, but there are times of the year when it's impassable and you cannot make the hike. While you do have to cross the riverbank to get to the trail, the main trail is among the boulders on the right side heading into the canyon. Some people have used the tributary creek as an alternative path, but it's pretty muddy. Eventually the walls close in and you are forced back into the riverbed if you want to continue up into the canyon. We've about reached the end point. It is my premise that this is not the Rio Grande River, this is still the creek that feeds into it. So the canyon that the river carved is beyond here where we can't get to because we're blocked by water, sheer rock walls, and that's about it. But it is beautiful. Yet another view from partway up one of the canyon walls. The canyon is indeed beautiful and impressive. I certainly prefer it to Boquillas Canyon we went to earlier in the trip.
So I stand corrected. That was, in fact, the Rio Grande River we were in. I don't understand how it's dry here, but further downstream where we're camping, that it has a flow of water to it. Nevertheless, we are back into Mexico again today because we crossed to the other side of the canyon and walked a little bit on the bank of that side of it, and the borderline is in the middle of the river. So yes, we are back in Mexico without any papers or documentation. Oh my. With the help of a ranger from the National Park Service, I have gotten to the bottom of the mystery of how the Rio Grande can be dry at Santa Elena Canyon and be flowing down at the village where we're camping. There are hot springs and other springs near the village where we're staying that provide the water that we see flowing through, which actually is quite a bit. So I'm surprised that that much water can come just from the springs, but that's where it comes from.
Before it was a park, somehow there was farming in this area. They used the Rio Grande to irrigate the crops, but
I don't know how they got anything to grow here. The soils just don't seem very conducive.
We got up before sunrise on our last day to go to the hot springs near Rio Grande Village Campground. It was so hot during our stay in Big Bend National Park that going to the hot springs actually would have been cool springs because the air temperature most days was hotter than the springs. The views from the springs were stunning. Then we headed back to our campsite to start the long drive back to civilization.
Well, this is it. The moment of truth. Do or die, or have Mrs. E-Hermes kill me. We are 120 miles from the nearest charger, and there is nothing in between, and I mean nothing, not even a wall outlet. Usually that would be easy enough to get to, but we also have about 3,000 feet of elevation gain, so it's going to be excitingly close to see if we can get back to the charger before we run out of juice. Let's find out. We made it to the top of the very first big climb. It was 20 miles. We used 13% of the battery. When we drove that without the trailer the last couple days, just doing sightseeing, it took 9% of the battery, so the trailer penalty is not very much, so I'm pretty confident we're going to be okay. Now we're going downhill. I'm not sure we're going to get any back, but at least we won't be using any. Well, now we have a new problem. We were going to go to the Tesla supercharger in Alpine, Texas. That's the distance we knew we had to cover. Mrs. E-Hermes just checked availability, and that station is down and out of service. So now we can't go there to charge, so now we have to try to get to Fort Stockton, which is going to be really dicey. It said we'd have 17 miles range on the navigation system when we put that in. Now it's going to be interesting. This is pretty disappointing because I had checked that station several times over the last few days to make sure it would be in service, and I just assumed it would, but as of today, it is out of service. When I was first planning this trip, I didn't know for sure if I would have the adapter to use the Tesla superchargers. So my plan at that point was to go back to Fort Stockton, the Electrify America at the Walmart, and that's what we're gonna have to do. My bailout plan for that was to spend another night at a campground halfway in between. But the car says we'll get to Fort Stockton with 56 miles of range, which is way plenty. Not worried about that at all. So the best news is we have options for all the chargers. If Electrify America fails us, which it often does, we can use Tesla. When Tesla fails us, we can use something else. We made it all the way back to Fort Stockton, I think this is, Fort something or other. Walmart Supercenter Electrify America, where we charged on our way into the park. We made it here with 24%, so it was an easy trip to make it all the way up here. It did take us a little bit out of our way. I would have preferred to go to the Tesla supercharger in Alpine, Texas, but this was certainly my original plan before I knew I had the adapter. So we're gonna charge here, and then it says I don't need another charge until we get to the campground, so that's even better. We'll only have one charge today, and then we'll be at Carlsbad RV Park and Campground. We certainly hope that you have enjoyed this look at Big Bend National Park. Some features of the Rivian R1S showing how it can go off-road and on-road and travel to very remote places, even pulling a camper. If you did, please hit that like button. Since I know you're subscribed by now, make sure you hit the bell button so you'll be notified when we upload the Carlsbad Cavern episode. Thank you!